I'm going to experiment with a recipe today that a fan of the website sent me. And the story goes that it was something he remembered from his childhood that his late aunt made. He said I could use her name. It was Sue Bajek, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And after she passed away, he bugged his cousin to send him this recipe. Then he photographed it and sent it to me. It's in her handwriting. And it's a Polish dish called Golumpki. He said he was from upper state New York where they pronounced it Gumki. I went onto the internet and looked at several recipes on YouTube, several videos. And some people pronounce it Golumpki, some people pronounce it Gumki. And it's got different spelling as well. It's a Polish dish. It's stuffed cabbage leaves. I don't know how I feel about that. My mom used to make corned beef and cabbage. I used to leave the house because the house would just stink of sulfur. But he said this has none of the odor and flavor that you normally associate with cooking cabbage. It requires 1 or 2 heads of cabbage depending upon how much filling you have. I bought 2 heads of cabbage just in case, make sure I would have enough. What do you think of my cabbages? Hopefully these will be okay. If I have 1 left over, I can always make it again, right? And then freeze it. I can freeze them in small portions, 1 or 2 per package, and I can enjoy them all winter long. It sounds like they're going to be delicious. So let's make Golumpki. But the first thing I need to do is take you back, because yesterday I did some of the prep work. I did actually quite a bit of the prep work. So here we are. The previous day, I'm going to do some of my prep work. Because I have a meat grinder, I just don't want to buy ground meat that much anymore. I just grind my own. So I've got some beef chuck, roughly 2 pounds of beef chuck, and 1 pound of pork shoulder that I'm going to grind up today. So 2 pounds of beef would be about 900 grams, therefore 1 pound of pork would be about 450 grams. I'm using the medium size grinding disc, and I'm only going to grind this through once. I don't need it too finely ground. I'm going to set this on number 4. And start grinding. First thing I need to do is cut this core out of the cabbage. So working with a really sharp knife, you want to go through there like so. This will help it to cook better, and it'll help the leaves to separate. You can take a little bit more of that out. One of the cooks said to take this piece out, that it's sweet. I'll save that. Okay, take out a little bit more of this core. There it is. That looks good. And a plane going overhead. That's done. I have in the meantime been heating a large pot of water to boiling. This is my old pressure cooker. It's no longer a pressure cooker. I took out the pressure regulator because it had failed. And then I very carefully want to lower my cabbage down inside. That'll float. Beautiful. And then I want to cover this again and then bring this back up to the boil and cook it for about 15 minutes, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So my cabbage now has been boiling for 20 minutes. Lots of steam. Don't drain it. Keep the water, because as you're removing the leaves, you might find that the inner part of the cabbage isn't completely cooked yet. You can always return it to the pot. And then carefully remove it from the boiling water, letting that drain a little bit. Then I'm going to place that in a bowl. I can finish draining there. And I'm going to let that cool down a little bit until it's safe enough to handle. So as I showed you earlier, I did some prep work yesterday. There's my ground meat. That's my pork, and that's my beef. I'm adding to this 2.5 cups of cooked rice. I cooked that yesterday, put it in the refrigerator. Most people undercook the rice. They'll cook it for about 12 minutes, and then it'll finish cooking later on in the oven when it bakes. So that's 2.5 cups. By weight, that's 14 ounces, 400 grams. What I started with was 1 cup of rice, which was 6.5 ounces, 185 grams. That was dry rice. 2 cups of water, 475 milliliters. That yielded way more than enough than I needed for this recipe. This is one of the unique ingredients. I didn't see this in any of the videos that I watched. This is a 1/4 pound, 115 grams of lightly browned bacon. I started with a 12-ounce package, 340 grams of raw bacon, and then I sautéed it until it was lightly browned. And I had more than enough, just enough for some nibbles. Because you can't cook bacon without eating some of it. I mean, come on, right? Okay, so that was 1/4 pound, 115 grams of lightly browned bacon that I chopped up yesterday. Okay, and then I have 2 medium onions that I diced rather small, and I sautéed those until they were tender, translucent, and just maybe a little bit browned. I'm going to add to this 2 whole eggs. These are large eggs from the refrigerator. And this bowl is looking so full. It's going to be fun to work with. Then salt to taste. I'm going to put in a generous helping of salt. And I may need to add more salt later. I'll taste that by frying a little bit of that mixture and seeing how it tastes for salt. Plenty of fresh ground black pepper. I just want to grate a lot of black pepper in there. Maybe 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Another ingredient that some people used that wasn't in the original recipe, but I thought I would try it. I'm going to put some, maybe a tablespoon of freshly chopped parsley. That's chopped fresh parsley. And then you can, if you want, but I'm not going to do it, you can add, some people add some cloves of garlic, 2, 3, 4 cloves of garlic that are minced or crushed through a garlic press. Okay, I've got to mix this up, but before I do that, I'm going to put some gloves on. Everybody pretty much agreed that the best way to do this is by hand. And then work underneath. This is going to take a while to gently mix this. And what I'm not doing is I'm not using my hands and crushing things because I don't want to crush the texture out of that beef and pork. Okay, there's my patty. See what that tastes like. I'm pretty sure it's going to need more salt. Yeah. It's good, but it definitely needs salt. All right, I'm going to put my gloves back on, mix that salt in, and I'll cover this and set this aside. Okay, I'm starting to work with the cabbage here. And this is cooled down enough that I can handle this. They recommended taking some of these outer, older leaves off and setting them aside because they can be used later on for lining the casserole dish. Okay, to roll one of these leaves, most people started by shaving off part of this rib down the center of the cabbage leaf, then turning it over, putting a good sized dollop of the filling toward one end. I'm using the stem end, and then start rolling up Fold in the sides, tuck them underneath, and there is a cabbage roll. Some people will secure it with a toothpick, and what I'm doing is I have a tray over here that I've lined with parchment paper, and I'm just going to put the cabbage rolls on that. It's going to take me a while to do all of these. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm all done. I'm working with smaller leaves now, and I can tell you a little trick that I just discovered. No one mentioned this on YouTube. When I got down to the bottom, where it started to get really small, it wasn't cooked down in there. Rather than boiling it in the water, plane going overhead, I put it in the microwave for a minute, and that softened it up. Now I'm working with these smaller leaves, so I'm using a smaller amount. In one video that I saw, Martha Stewart said that the smaller ones are good for appetizers. Her mother was making Golumpki. So there's a little bit of a smaller one. Maybe 2 of those would make a nice meal. I have to say they do roll very nicely, very easily. And in the meantime, because I have so much filling left over, I started cooking that second head of cabbage while I'm waiting for that other head of cabbage to cook. I'm going to start making the sauce. I have here 2 28-ounce cans of plum tomatoes. These have to be crushed, so I put my gloves back on. Might as well get the other can in there. And then I'm just going to get my gloves in there and just basically crush these up until they're all nicely crushed. That'll take a few minutes. My other head of cabbage is now cooling, so I'm going to start working on my sauce. As I mentioned, I have 2 28-ounce cans. They're about 800 grams each of crushed tomatoes or whole tomatoes. You crush them yourself. I thought this was odd. I've never seen this before, but I want to try it. This is 1/2 cup or 75 grams of brown sugar. Okay, salt and pepper. She recommended a teaspoon of salt. Just going to put a couple of good pinches in there. And then some pepper. About 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Maybe a little bit more. And then some lemon juice. I thought this was odd. 1/2 cup of lemon juice. I'm going to move this to the stove. Stir this. Bring this up to a low simmer. I have a lid that I can put on that. And I'm going to cook this maybe 20 to 30 minutes. I filled that baking sheet with Golumpki. So I'm going to use my largest cooking pot to put those in. So they have to be baked. I still have plenty of filling left over, but I have some more leaves to fill. So I'm out of room on my baking sheet. I'm going to get some of these in the pan now, and this is where you use these older leaves. Shouldn't say older, the outer leaves. They were too torn up and not as nice to use. You put those on the bottom. So I'll put one more right there, and then start laying your Golumpki, again, seam side down, inside the pot. And then start putting in sauce. I cooked this for about 20 minutes to tenderize those tomatoes a little bit. This is going to bake for quite a while, so anything that isn't cooked thoroughly will be cooked thoroughly. And you can make this sauce as thin or as thick as you want. Some people actually add water to it because they want more liquid in the pan. I'm just going to use it as is because I'm trying to follow that recipe as closely as possible. Sue Bajek's recipe. Okay. A little bit more maybe right over here. And then Gonna put some of these smaller leaves on top. These are the ones that are just too small to use as Golumpki, but get them in there. And a couple more big leaves here. Uses up all the leaves that I have so far, but I still have another piece of cabbage. It's like part of the head of cabbage, and then I can start layering again. I'm going to layer these a little bit differently. There shouldn't be any problem separating them, but just in case. Those are the larger ones. So there's my second layer now in there. I'm going to put just a few remaining leaves that I have left over on top. These were too small to fill. Okay. And then I'm going to spoon plenty of this sauce on top. In fact, I might just do this. I think it would be easier. There we go. And spoon that all over the top, spread it around. And the recipe said you can finish that with salt and pepper. So I'll put some salt on there. Pinch of salt. And then grind some black pepper over it. All right. I'm going to put a lid on that. And in the meantime, I'm heating my oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 160, 165 Celsius. I'm going to bake this covered for 1.5 hours. Then I'll remove the lid and bake it for an additional 30 minutes. Whoa. There it is, out of the oven. That is a lot of Golumpki, or Gumki, whatever they call it. One recipe said to let it rest for 30 minutes and then it'll be ready to eat. I don't mind doing that, but I gotta tell you, I want to dig in right now, but I'm going to be patient. I'm going to wait. I'm seeing bubbling around the edges, a little bit of bubbling, so I know it's plenty hot inside. Okay, there it is. I'm about to taste, for the first time in my life, Golumpki. It's good. Wow. I never thought I would really enjoy that. But that is really, really good. My house doesn't have any of that sulfur smell like my mom's did when she made corned beef and cabbage. It's got a very mild flavor, but a good meaty flavor to it. That's good. So excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy an early dinner. We'll call it an afternoon snack of Golumpki.